Okay, sorry for stopping everything. We can continue now.
You idiot! The universe is a constant. It's just always been there.
Well, that would actually agree with the first law of thermodynamics, but once again, you can stop being a jerk.
Well, if you're right, that means the universe defies the law of cause and effect, doesn't it?
No, because the law of cause and effect only has to deal with matter changing from one state of being to another state of being, not causing it to exist. Once again, I have to remind you that you've made a fallacy of equivocation.
And once again, I have to remind you that he didn't. And that you committed the fallacy of convenient definition to the exclusion of all other meanings and references. The law of cause and effect is not just about, quote, matter changing from one state of being to another state of being, but is simply the principle of causality in general, in which an action or event will produce a certain response to the action in the form of another event.
And that would make the existence of our universe supernatural, which means we both believe in a supernatural cause for our existence.
Wow, when you build your argument on a logical fallacy, you can come up with some crazy crap.
And when you build your whole rebuttal argument on a fallacy of convenient and overly narrow definition, and then wrongly think that the other person is committing a fallacy, the crazy and laughable crap is all yours, kid. Cause and effect goes beyond changing states of being, and is applicable to general things.
You idiot! The universe just kind of started on its own. The Big Bang was how the universe created itself.
What the hell? Okay, Mr. Creationist, answer this honestly. Were you high when you were making this guy?
Ad hom and immature clownish dodge.
How would the universe create itself? That would also break the law of cause and effect.
Actually, no, because once again, the laws of cause and effect has to do with matter transferring from one state of being to another state of being. What he just said would break the first law of thermodynamics. And would just be, in general, a really stupid thing to say.
Actually, what you said was stupid because you confused the word, quote, universe with the word, quote, energy. The first law of thermodynamics deals with the principle of how energy can be transformed, but is neither created nor destroyed. But we're now talking about the universe itself, not necessarily, quote, energy. The universe had a beginning, though. The question is how? Big Bang? Big speculation, maybe? Why would there be a dense dot or, quote, singularity to begin with? Why did it supposedly expand at some point? It got bored being a tiny dot for so long? Wanted to expand its horizons, maybe?
You just said that was a big reason you don't believe in God. So then, shouldn't you stop believing in our universe?
Even if we are to ignore all your other logical fallacies, there's one big difference between God and this universe. We can actually observe this universe.
That's true. We can actually observe this universe. But that was not the point there. The point was you never actually, quote, observed how this universe started or got here. Did you forget that, kid? So that was the comparison he was making. That just because you can't observe God in that sense, you never observed the supposed accidental, quote, Big Bang either. Yet you religiously and dogmatically believe that wild conjecture with no real solid, irrefutable, observable proof. And there are whole documented things of why the accidental Big Bang is impossible and unworkable, of why gas does not clump and form stars in space, and how shooting things in space with no friction would always go on in one direction forever and never swirl properly to form galaxies or solar systems. Whole mathematical and astrophysical studies on this.
Haven't you heard of virtual particles? Scientists have found particles that might come into existence from literally nothing. So maybe something can come from nothing.
Okay, for one, virtual particles have not been fully scientifically verified. 2. This answer is unneeded ever since we've shown this entire thing is built on an equivocation fallacy.
Actually, no it wasn't. But you neurotically and stubbornly want to believe that, despite the inescapable problem of just how and why matter exists in the first place. And it must have had a cause to even exist. You want to limit it per your own small mind and world to just, quote, matter-changing states of being. To how did matter even get here in the first place, because it's outside the scope of your small mind and senses, and then conveniently dodge the whole point and problem of the question of existence. Why should there even be matter and energy around at all? Why is there anything around and in existence? Okay, we know you like to put those hard problems and questions aside. That's fine.
Well, if you're right, doesn't that make God scientifically possible?
No. No, it wouldn't. If you knew what science was, you wouldn't have asked that question.
Well, here the drone is trying to say that because God can't be tested in a laboratory or put in a box or tube to be, quote, studied in that sense, that therefore God cannot be scientifically possible. But the atheist drone would not have said that if he knew what was meant by the question, quote, scientifically possible. Because the hypocrisy of allowing for the scientific possibility of nonsense like, quote, virtual particles. What was meant was if particles can come from literally nothing with no real proof, then isn't a supreme intelligence, though not fully understood, at least technically possible, given the complexity of the universe that we do know scientifically. But since this dork here puts God in the same category as leprechauns, idiotically, we see why his brain-dead biases won't let him see or understand how God is scientifically at least possible, if not fully understood yet.
I've heard some really smart atheists talk about other dimensions of time, or an eternally oscillating universe. Stuff like that might explain a universe without a first cause.
Gracious, I see that you built your straw man with the exact same equivocation fallacy. That's how you plan to win this argument.
This nerdy clown really likes to use the phrase, quote, equivocation fallacy a lot, doesn't he? Even when it doesn't really apply. Funny how he didn't explain anything here, though.
Well, can those things be observed scientifically?
No.
Actually, the answer would be not yet. We're still working on quantum physics. But blaming magic doesn't get us any closer to an actual answer.
Actually, the answer is no. Because, quote, not yet, and wishful thinking is still no. But of course, in typical atheist hypocrisy and inconsistency, you still give that as a, quote, possibility even over a divine creator. Because, well, it would be blaming magic, and any kind of notion for the divine would be a, quote, retreat, right? And, quote, we can't allow a divine foot in the door, now can we? But it's okay to believe or concoct all kinds of wild, cockeyed scenarios or speculations and ignore the implications for intelligent direction. Gotcha.
Isn't that one of your biggest complaints about God?
Actually, no, our problem is that you're making a claim and believing it without evidence. We, on the other hand, are actually looking for the answer. What he threw out were some hypotheticals, but we won't believe them until we actually find the evidence to back up the claim. That's the difference.
No, the problem is you ignore the evidence for intelligent design and God because what you really want right now is observable proof. And, quote, proof is different from, quote, evidence. Proof is solid and unmistakable, whereas, quote, evidence is more general and is more or less inferences from the facts available. There's plenty of evidence for God or a divine creator with the right distances, ratios, proportions, and efficient atoms, and the Earth always conveniently 93 million miles away from the Sun. If the Earth was 1/10 closer to the Sun, the Earth would roast in a solar furnace. If the Earth rotated at 1/10 the speed that it does, the Sun would destroy all the vegetation during the day, but then all of it would be frozen at night if it missed burning it up at day. It would have 240 hours in a day to do the dirty work either way. If the moon was 75,000 miles away from your head instead of 240,000 miles, the ocean tides would go clean over the entire continents twice a day, and everyone would be drowned. Wow, what thoughtfulness blind accidental chance had, and quote, Goldilocks cop-outs. There's evidence for God, or at least intelligent direction, just not clear proof as yet. But Armageddon will be proof enough, even for the drones.
Never mind. I've decided I don't totally agree with the law of cause and effect, okay?
No need to do that, because what you two have been talking about hasn't been the law of cause and effect.
Actually, yes, it has, in some sense. Because again, what caused matter to even get here in the first place? No answer? The law of cause and effect is not just about matter changing shape or form or states of being. It's simply about causation in general. It's the concept of causality, in which an action or event will produce a certain response to the action in the form of another event. That's all.
Okay, that means you can no longer use that law to argue against God.
Agreed. I will never use your bastardized false version of the laws of cause and effect to argue against God.
It was not really a bastardized false version of that law, as there is an application, in a sense, that should not be dishonestly or conveniently ignored.
So this was the argument that was supposed to blow up my head. Sorry to say, but it's still quite attached. Actually a little bit disappointing, but that's what happens when you build your entire argument on a logical fallacy.
Which is, as it turns out, what you did here, kid, as do all atheists, with this line of, quote, the functions of the universe and the solar systems and the earth can be explained by natural processes. So there's no need for a God or a divine eternal being. See, the we can explain how things operate naturally argument is a straw man and a category error. Because theists do not argue that how the natural world functions cannot be explained by natural processes. The argument is that those processes do not account for themselves or speak to their origin. Just like knowing how cars operate does not mean that Henry Ford did not exist. Not complex enough? What about computers? Even Darwinists have tried to make analogies of Darwinian evolution and mutations with computer functions. The point is that just like knowing how your Windows program operates does not mean that it did not have or need an outside programmer.
But anyway, good night everyone, and may the Force be with you.
What force is that, kid? Some blind pantheistic quote force, maybe? Or maybe you're just joking around. Fine. The point that you don't want to grasp is that logically, the implication is that they would still need an intelligent start to get the whole thing rolling in the first place, not blind randomness or accidents. The atheist drone in this rebuttal video is guilty of redefining things for convenience. The law of quote, cause and effect is not just limited to matter-changing shape or states of being or whatever he was barfing to try to wiggle out of the problem. The cause and effect principle is broad. That can easily be checked out on Wikipedia or any reference work, like I said. Alright. Also, it's been said by atheists that to claim that God did it because we don't know what caused the supposed, quote, Big Bang or whatever, is only a, quote, argument from ignorance. That's what they say. It's not just an argument from ignorance, but an argument from inference and evidence and implication. Also, it's hypocritical because atheists and committed Darwinist drones always argue from ignorance and circular reasoning, quick to not, quote, allow a divine foot in the door. They presuppose that there was no deliberate direction or an eternal being simply because they don't know and can't test or study this God in a lab. So because this God can't be put in a box or laboratory and therefore cannot be known in that sense, They presupposed that he doesn't exist or is not necessary. In other words, argument from ignorance. See the point? Since they can't put the supreme intelligence in a tube or examine him in that sense, they argue from their own, quote, ignorance that he either does not exist at all or that there just had to be other ways that the universe, with all its attendant intricacies and complexities, came about. Committed atheists who don't want there to be a God, in many cases, by their own admission, don't want the universe to have come about like that. So they just assume that it didn't, despite the implications for intelligent design and direction. So no, the theist's argument goes a bit beyond a, quote, argument from ignorance, but more so an argument from inference. It can be argued that the existence of an eternal being and creative intelligence and pre-designer can be proven by reason and inference and strong implication. Atheism has no real answer and will arrogantly dismiss the biblical creator and Jehovah or any kind of eternal being as even a possibility, simply because they are ignorant of his workings and appearance in some lab. Argument against God from, quote, ignorance. Also, atheists don't understand the important fact and point that God is not an effect, so would not be caused. So it's not all things have a cause. No, it's all effects that have a cause. The eternal God is not an effect, but is himself eternal energy. As it says in Isaiah, he's dynamic energy. And sustains all energy, and in turn sustains the universe. Not fully understood, of course. But the question again for the atheist is, where did energy, mass, and complex natural laws even come from? Was there a cause for all of that? And if so, logically, what could it be?
You idiot.